where they'll have someone on staff teaching a similar class, or they'll have, have brought myself or other sex educators through teaching blowjob classes. And it's not just me, it's for everyone. Those classes tend to be the top sellers. And for people who care about women and women's bodies, they can get frustrating. Like, why can we always sell out a blowjob class but not a female orgasm class? And I know the reason. The reason is that for a person who wants to learn about sex or their bodies, it's much easier for them to say to their partner, I'm going to a blowjob class, than it is to say, I'm going to a female orgasm class. Because if they say they're going to a blowjob class, it sounds fun. It sounds like their partner is included. And it doesn't sound like a critique. Where if they say I'm going to a female orgasm class, their partner may be like, well, am I not good enough? Or is there, so there's a little bit of a stigma. But I find that once I get people into, like my blowjob class is my gateway class. Okay. Like I just got to get them through the door. And once I get them through the door, I've never done a blowjob class without answering questions also about female orgasms. So
that's good.
I call it my gateway workshop.
Yep, the gateway drug. That's awesome. So I've got a list of things that you, and it's quite a list, I might add, of things that you're qualified to talk about. And I thought it would be fun because we really haven't done this, in a long time, if really even ever, the way you've phrased it here. And I bunched together two things that you had. One is I've never had an orgasm, and then the second one is I am not sure if I have had an orgasm. So I wanted to kind of put those out there to you, Ducky, and kind of let you go and see what you have to say on this.
Yeah, well, you guys asked me, like, what are some of the most common questions, or what would you like to talk about? And so I just proposed, the ones I get most often. And the question I get most often, no matter what the workshop topic is, help, I've never had an orgasm, right? That's the number one question from, female participants. And I learned what were the most common questions because for years, as I did classes in person, I would pass out blank index cards and let everybody write their questions down so everybody could participate evenly, like the brave and the not so brave. It was all anonymous. The questions would come up, and again and again and again, I've never had an orgasm. And so I would tackle that particular question. It's really, really common for women to not have had an orgasm. It's also very common, and this is why I bunched those two questions together, for women to have them but not understand what a female orgasm is or can feel like. And so I'd have to define it for them, and then they go, oh, yes, I have had that. Even if it's just a light or a subtle orgasm, I help them understand what to look for in their bodies. Because, most of us, if we've gotten any kind of sex education in our lives, especially as young people, maybe you got it in health class in school, or maybe you had a sister or a mother who was willing to share some information. But generally, when they teach us about our bodies, they teach us about our fallopian tubes, right?
Oh, yeah. I know all about those fallopian tubes, let me tell you.
The uterus and the fallopian looks like a little goat's head, and kids come home from health class and they can draw that picture. And so they teach us about our reproductive anatomy, but they don't teach us about our pleasure anatomy. And so what happens is we grow up with this very abstract understanding of our own bodies. We have to find our own clitoris, and then we have to show it where our partners where our clitoris is, and then I've gone and taught at Ivy League colleges, Columbia University, Harvard University, and had students come to me not understanding, where the pee comes out of their body, and that's okay, but what happens is that women go through, the early portions of their life, having the experiences they have and reading the things that they can find and having the conversations they can have. But they start to understand that maybe somebody else is having an orgasm with penetrative sex and I'm not. Or maybe, there's something I don't know about my body. And then what happens is they demand to know more. They walk through the doors of fantasy gifts looking for somebody who can give them answers to their questions. But they don't even know how to phrase the questions. It usually comes out as I'm not having orgasms, or they're exploring the walls and all the toys, trying to assess like how do these connect with my body. They're looking for connective tissue, connective information. And that's the beauty of a sex shop, is that all the information that we are not given as females can be found in a good sex shop.
Yeah, my long time employees, because it takes time, learn this. It learns how to suss out real fast what is the person really asking. And it's usually about an orgasm or premature ejaculations. One of these two things is what we'll get. So yeah, I understand. If you stacked up all your little index cards, that one pile would be so darned big.
Yeah,
it really, really is. And the truth is, what an orgasm is for a person of any gender is a series of involuntary muscular contractions. It doesn't matter how it's triggered, from the clitoris, from the G-spot, from penetrative play, from anal sex, from nipples, from breathing heavy, flexing your muscles, from stroking your shaft, to whatever it is that drives it. It's always a series of involuntary muscular contractions. So that second question of I'm not sure if I've had an orgasm. And the reason why I put those two things together is when I explain to people what it is a series of involuntary muscular contractions. And I'll say, if you've ever felt fluttering in your muscles, in your pelvis, it can be really light, like butterflies fluttering. That is an orgasm. And then the stronger your muscles are, the more blood and oxygen you can pull into your pelvis, the bigger your orgasm will be. And that's when you see people, having these more profound orgasms where they might squirt in conjunction with it, or they may feel the orgasm down their inner thighs right into the arches of their feet, because their muscles are strong and their body's connected, and they can release themselves into that orgasm. And so what I do is I teach people what an orgasm is, and then I teach them how to have bigger, more badass orgasms.
A couple hints for us, just while we're on the topic. Do you mind?
And those would be...
I'm just asking.
Wait a minute. Where's my pen and paper?
Yeah, I know, right? Here.
That's a very big compliment, because I know you guys know your
Just wondering what your input would be.
Well, for me, I call the clitoris is the center of the freaking universe. You've got all those nerve endings coming together at one place, and to have an orgasm through the clitoris is awesome. Not everybody will, but most people will be able to drive an orgasm through their clitoris. And then to use that in conjunction with breathing deep and flexing squeezing the pelvic muscles during sex play alone or with a partner. And when a person first starts doing this, it feels kind of mechanical to breathe in and squeeze and breathe in and squeeze along with the thrusting or the rubbing. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and then it just becomes part of how you play. It's almost like you build the practice. And so every time you have sex with yourself, or every time you have sex with a partner, you're actually building your pelvic muscles, and you're bringing blood and oxygen through them. It's a really great thing to do for your body. But and then alongside that, of course, you can use Kegel balls, and that you can wear them inside your body. To gain pelvic muscle strength as well. And gaining this strength is not a life sentence. It's not like when people have a set of Kegel balls and they put them inside their body, and maybe they'll wear them around their house, for 20 minutes or 40 minutes while they fold laundry or pay bills or something, right? People think, well, do I have to do this the rest of my life in order to have muscle strength? And in reality, it's more like physical therapy. You use the Kegel muscles, 3, 4, 5 times a week for a couple of weeks, and you really start to see a change in your body. And after about 4 to 8 weeks, your body is there. And then you put the Kegel balls away for a while, and then maybe you have a child, or you have, or you kind of fall out of the practice, or you haven't been having sex a lot, and you want to rebuild your strength, you can go back to your Kegel balls,
And there's not a $40 copay each time.
There you go.
Sorry, I had physical therapy on my ankle, so I know what this is going. Like, this sounds like a lot more fun. Okay.
That's awesome.
But, the stronger the muscles are, the bigger the orgasm is going to be. And you start pumping them during sex play, that's where it is. And I come to this information very honestly because, I'm a person who has a lot of orgasmic strength, if you will. But it happened to me because I was born with a bunch of birth defects, but one in particular was that my urinary tract didn't form properly. And so when I was 7, they put me in the hospital right there in downtown Minneapolis, and they did 13 surgeries on my body.
Oh, my word.
And I didn't think I was going to survive this. And so I was in the hospital for a year. And when they fixed the issue and they were ready to send me home, what had happened is I had been catheterized during that time. So I had a little tube that went up my urethra. And so I hadn't been using my pelvic muscles to hold my urethra shut, right? Mm-hmm. And these pelvic muscles, they drive orgasms, but they also start and stop the flow of pee. Your butt's part of this orgasmic platform. So it's the vaginal muscles, the urinary tract muscles, and the anal muscles, right? They're all interconnected. And so they took the catheter out. They wanted to send me home, but I couldn't stop the flow of pee. So they had to teach me how to exercise my Kegel muscles. So at this point, I'm probably pushing 8 years old. They send me home. I've already missed a year of school. This has really been, you're from Minnesota. I could be wrong, but I feel like culturally we're brought up to be fairly modest people.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. And females are brought up to be pretty modest. And so, part of having these surgeries is I had been in a teaching hospital. So if one doctor came and looked at my body, 3 doctors came and looked at my body. So it was a little bit humiliating. A certain sort of modesty had been stripped away from me, and it had been painful, and it had been embarrassing. And now I'm going home. I want to go back to school. I'm a little child, a little girl. And they say, if you do these Kegel exercises, they didn't even call them. They just said exercises. Mm-hmm. This will stop, and your body you'll go back to being able to control your body. And so I was a good girl. I went home and I did my exercises every single day. And the exercises were this. They said, I want you to go to the bathroom and let all the pee out of your body. Mm-hmm. And while you're sitting there, what you're going to then do is squeeze the muscle, squeeze your pelvic muscles 10 times and do 3 sets. So they taught me to do 30 flexes. And they said I could do it every time I go pee or at least 3 times a day. So that was the entire outline of this beautiful nurse who taught. I can still see her face, who taught me how to do this. So I go home and I do the exercises every single day. But the thing is, no one ever told me to stop doing the exercises.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how long I had been doing them, but mm-hmm. I remember sitting in the restroom in my house. I'm doing my exercises, and I'm like counting 1, 2, and I'm like, God, this sucks. I hated it. I hated doing it.
But
and before I could get through the second set, something was feeling different, and then boom, orgasm. I don't even know what an orgasm is. I don't know what masturbating is. All I know is that this is awesome, right? Because here is this part of my body had never done anything awesome for me, and suddenly it had. And so I became completely obsessed. I was already runty. They were used to me being sick, so I'd tell my mother I was sick, and I'd stay home from school and masturbate. And and now I stand in front of Harvard, and I'm like, look at me. I've masturbated my way to success. People are like, you can do that? I'm like, you can do that.
They're taking a look at their student loans going, really?
Well, that's the next thing I say is don't drop out.
No, yeah, don't drop out. Yes. No, I can see that. I've been having some urinary issues. So yes, there is a lot of squeezing happening with me. So yeah. and I understand exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
But with sex, so that squeezing, that can make you really strong, but you couple that with rhythmic breathing, so you're packing your blood with oxygen, so you're squeezing your muscles and breathing, put a vibrator on your clitoris, and boom, orgasms right there, which is awesome.
Well, it's so great. I mean, that's a really bummer of a story that could not turn out well for a lot of different people, but it's almost like you got a reward and some divine encouragement there to forge forward. And it drove the path of your life, which is so cool.
Yeah, it starts out tragic, but it ends triumphant.
See, I love that. Mm-hmm. So, okay, these are a couple I was dying to get your take on too. From the list of questions that you sent us, Ducky, you talked about, will a sex toy ruin me for partner play? And I got to tell you, this came up over Thanksgiving when we had out-of-town company that I had never met. And, right? It's like, how did sex toys come up? And it's like, and something came up about the podcast. Oh yeah, how long have you been doing it? 2 years, da, 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 da. And then there was this awkward moment from someone that I'd never met that was like, well, the sex toys can, interfere in a relationship. And I thought, oh, so not the time and place for this conversation, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. Well, you heard me say that, I now work with a company. I work for a company called Blush. They make some of the strongest, most amazing motors on the market, and that's the reason that I love them.